Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, everybody. My name is Jason Podolin. I'm super happy to be here with you today. I'm an ex-NHLer, former pro for 10 years, who now helps young athletes realize their potential as a high-performance mindset coach. And I am here today as a podcast host, because that's another hat that I like to wear. And I host a podcast called Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin. And that's where the good people here at the Coaches site saw me and enjoyed the content that I was producing and really liked the conversations. And they said, hey, we'd love to have you come on to our conference and interview a head coach. Would you be interested? And I definitely said yes. I really loved what the Coaches site was doing and was really proud and honored to be a part of this great weekend. So, you know, in my pro career, in my 10 years, one of the benefits of being somebody that maybe didn't aspire to all the accolades that they were supposed to, and being traded and playing on a lot of different teams, is that I went through a lot of adversity. I had to manage circumstances that were sometimes felt like they were out of my control. And I realized along the way that a lot of what we do as hockey players is managing opportunities and managing situations where we're not getting the opportunities that we want, which comes down to the mental game, which comes down to the mindset side of sports. So in doing what I do now, I really love cultivating conversations about mindset, about the human aspect of the hockey player, because we all have gladiators. We're all these gladiators when we're on the ice, and we're stoic and we're prepared and we're fierce and we're competitive. But there is a human being inside that gladiator that, you know, has anxiety, that has fear of judgment, that doesn't want to make mistakes, that wants to be liked by his teammates and by his coaches. And when we're trying to manage all these situations, all these emotional circumstances inside a game where we're trying to get results, it can be a little confusing. And as coaches, which most of you, I assume, are going to be watching this today, you need to get the most out of your players. Well, how do we do that, right? How do we do that? And that's where I try to guide this conversation today. One of the other benefits of me being a suitcase, as I call it, is that I played with a ton of different athletes, and I played with for a ton of different coaches. And today my guest is one of my former coaches back in the 99-2000 season when I was with the Lowell Lock Monsters. Bruce Boudreau was just coming up to the AHL after a championship in Mississippi. And Bruce was nice enough to pick up the phone and say, yeah, I'd love to come on and have a conversation with you. And Bruce is the perfect guest, I felt, for today's conversation, because in keeping what Up My Hockey is as a podcast, being true to that, I knew that Bruce isn't necessarily an X's and O's guy. You know, he can talk forecheck and he can talk penalty kill strategy and power play sequences, but what he really likes to talk about is the emotional side of the game. He's a gut feel coach. He's a guy that wears his heart in his sleeve. And that's what I like to talk about too. So today's episode is really quite fantastic. It's great for the players, and it's great for the parents, and it's also great for the coaches here in the audience, because we start talking about things like how to manage superstars. We talk about things like how do you balance development and the desire for winning, because sometimes you're in leagues that you need to try and do both. We talk about how to create your inner circle when you're a head coach. Who do you get around you, and who are you looking for when you're trying to build that team? Another thing that we dive into is how to manage superstars. We all know in today's day and age that coaches become more expendable than the best player, let's say, or the star player. So how do we get these players to develop, all the while, keeping the integrity of the position, not making them upset or mad or angry or adversarial, and getting the most out of them and earning that trust of that superstar? So we dive into a ton of great things, not to mention also the evolution of coaching, like how to get better yourself, how to frame that as a way that, yeah, you know what, if you're not in growing, you're dying. And I think Bruce is a great example of that, for how long he's been around the game, and how 3 teams and I think 15 years, and I'm sure he'll get picked up and be coaching soon. But Bruce is a real charismatic guy. He's an awesome guy to be around. He has great engaging stories, and I know you're going to love this interview. To find out more about me and what I do, you can follow me on Instagram at Jason Podolin. I also have a parent group on Facebook that I'm really, really proud of, where we help develop the athletes of these parents that are trying to navigate the hockey world, bringing some guest experts on there. That's a great place to follow me, or my website, upmyhockey.com. And definitely, obviously, tune into the podcast because there's amazing guests there talking about their stories and their experiences and their challenges in navigating this world of hockey and how they got to the highest level. Whether you're a coach or whether you're a player, these stories all apply. So without further ado, I'm really excited to bring you my old coach, my friend, and an amazing guest with a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge in this great sport, Mr. Bruce Boudreau. Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Up My Hockey with Jason Padone for another episode. This is episode 35. No, check that. This is episode 36. Don't want to shortchange ourselves here. Episode 36 and counting. We are the podcast called Up My Hockey. We are currently the number 30 rated podcast in Canada for hockey. I'm super proud of that. We just broke through that rank the other day. And I want to thank all you listeners out there. I'm sure you know, maybe you don't know, but there are hundreds, thousands of podcasts out there with different levels of distribution and notoriety and backing and support. And for this podcast to be produced by me and one other guy, to have zero paid sponsors, to have zero media backing as far as distribution, as far as promotion, as far as dollars spent, I think is like really, really powerful and amazing. And I don't know what to say other than like, wow, and thanks. And obviously what we're doing here is working. The conversations are obviously enjoyed, and I enjoy having them. So it is such a win-win for me. After every interview I have, like the rest of the day, I am jacked. Like I love it. It inspires me. It pumps me up, and it really aligns me every time with what it is that I'm doing right now when it comes to the Facebook group and when it comes to my clients and helping people navigate the space of hockey, because I really do believe the conversations matter and the experience of others matters. So really exciting there. Thank you so much for everyone who's choosing to download, to listen right now. Again, I always ask you guys in the middle of the episode to share and to review and to like. And, you know, that is really how to continue to support this thing. Once again, without any financial backing this podcast. This is just my time and me sourcing clients and guests and finding people that I think are going to be great stories and share those stories with you. So, yeah, as far as your part, I mean, continue to do what you guys are doing. If you guys listen, you're doing me a favor. And if you share on your social media, you're doing me a favor. You're talking to your friends, you're doing the podcast a favor. And I appreciate every one of you who is doing that. But without further ado, we should talk about today's episode, because today's episode is a bit special in more ways than one. Not only do we have on Bruce Boudreau, who has been in the NHL forever, almost like 15 years, I think, currently not employed, as he was let go by the Minnesota Wild. But I believe he is the second most winningest coach in NHL history as far as win percentage is concerned, of coaches over 800 games coached. Like he is a force as far as that is concerned. And it's a real honor to have him on. But the genesis of this is a little bit different, because a site by, a group called the Coaches Site, which is run by Aaron Wilbur. Aaron Wilbur is CEO of the Coaches Site, reached out and enjoyed what we were doing here on Up My Hockey. He enjoyed the interviews. He liked the content. He thought what was going on here was pretty good. And the Coaches Site has an annual summit every year. And this year, because of COVID, they couldn't do it in person, so they were holding it virtually. And they asked if I could or would be willing to interview an NHL coach for their Coaches Summit, which goes out to their membership base and, which spans the globe, really. And I couldn't have been more honored, and I couldn't have been more thankful. So that was the impetus of this conversation. So I reached out to Bruce Boudreau, who I thought would be a great guest, a former coach of mine back in the days of where were we? Lowell Sound Taggers. It was his first season coming up from after winning a championship in the East Coast Hockey League with Mississippi. He stepped his foot in the AHL, and I had an opportunity to play for them there before his time in the NHL. So he agreed, because Bruce is such an amazing guy. He agreed to come on and chat. And what you're going to listen to today is the conversation that aired at the coaches site virtual summit. So we were a part of that, a part of their vast array of hockey experts that were involved in this thing, that were talking about all types of great subject matter. I totally encourage you guys to check out the coaches site and the programming there. They offer a lot of great resources for coaches and parents as well, quite frankly, and even players who are really curious and want to get a different angle of what coaches are thinking and doing. I think it's a great resource for everybody. But one little disclaimer here about the episode. I do ask Bruce in this episode about an event that happened while I played for him. And it caught him a little bit off guard. And since it's been aired, I've had quite a few people reach out, and it kind of got a little bit of attention. And it was a situation, I just want to provide a little bit more color that I wasn't able to in the episode, where I had just been sent down from LA, and I was in Lowell with the Sound Taggers there, and we had a split team. So there was half the team was from LA and half the team was from the Islanders, as far as prospects were concerned. And that year, we were doing okay. We were chugging along. We were a little over 500, but I was the team's leading scorer. I was the team's leading scorer and also the team's leading point getter. I think I had maybe 10 more goals than second place guy in our team. And at that point in the season, LA Kings called me up for their playoff run, which is somewhat normal, in the situation of they need to have some guys that have the ability to play if somebody gets hurt of the regulars. So I was called what is called a black ace. So I got called up for this playoff run. So I was gone for roughly, I think 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And LA ended up losing, I think, in 6 games that year. I didn't play in any games, but I was up practicing with the team and traveling with the team and doing what you do as a black ace. And meanwhile, the boys down in Lowell started the playoffs. They finished their last couple of regular season games and they started the playoffs, and they ended up sweeping the first round of the playoffs. So they won 3 games to nothing. I think it was over St. John. I got sent down, and on my return, I couldn't get on the ice. And it was the weirdest thing to me. Like, it just didn't make sense, and it kind of still doesn't make sense, and which is why I took the opportunity to ask Bruce, because it was always something that kind of stuck with me. I didn't understand. Nobody explained it to me. I didn't know if I had done something that I had forgotten about, that maybe I made somebody mad, or maybe I missed curfew, or who knows what I could have done. But I sat on the bench for 4 games, and we got swept in the second round of the series that year. So I bring that up during this interview, and of course Bruce doesn't remember why, and he gives a really nice, gentle answer. But afterwards, when the camera goes off or the microphone goes off, we do end up talking about it again. And he's such a great guy. He's like, I can't believe I did that to you. He goes, I have no idea why. He goes, that's why you learn as you grow as a coach. He goes, I should have never done that. And gave me crap for not going into his office and talking to him. So anyways, that's that story there. I think you'll enjoy that little interaction from Bruce and I, and he has a couple other really colorful stories. So anyways, I won't waste any more of your time. We'll get you to the interview, but this is the interview in its entirety. So this is my introduction to the interview is included here, and the interview itself. So I hope you enjoy it. Bruce, there's a ton of stuff in here that Bruce shares that I know you're going to love. And in true Up My Hockey style, we'll get right to it. So without further ado, I give you my interview for the Coaches Site's virtual summit with Bruce Boudreau. All right, here we are for Up My Hockey, and sitting in front of me is one of my past coaches from the 1999-2000 season, which went on to much bigger things than the Lowell Lock Monsters, and now has, how many seasons? Almost 15 seasons in the NHL.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago, which is so awesome. And it's great to see your face, Bruce. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Jason.
Awesome.
Looking forward to this. Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of listeners right now are going to be players and coaches, and those who don't know your story, maybe pre-coaching, you were a hell of a hockey player. You were a high draft pick, Memorial Cup champion. List goes on and on. AHL scoring leader. I think I can relate to you on a few of those levels, because you were trying, obviously, to get to the NHL. That's where we all wanted to go, and you wanted to stick, I'm sure, and that's where you wanted to be. How can you reflect on your playing days now, looking back on that, as far as maybe not getting the accolades and the results you wanted at the NHL level?
Well, it was simple to me as time went on. It wasn't simple at the time, but when you do come out and you're a high scorer and you've been on championship teams and that, then everything seems to come easy to you. Like I mean, when you're 18 and 19 and 20, everything just you don't even have to. It seems like you don't have to train. You can put your skates on and play and whatever. But I mean, what I found out is not doing that, not training like I should, not being probably in the condition that I should have been to be at the NHL level because it's a totally different condition. You go from step B to A, and it's a big jump. And I didn't realize the dedication that it took to be a full time NHL player until maybe I was 27, and by 27 you're not a prospect, you're a suspect at that time. And if I had to go back over again, I would have respected what I had to do a lot more, and what I would have had to do in the summer a lot more, and taken the game a lot more serious when I played it. I just thought it was going to be a continuation of junior. Yeah, you're going to lead the league in scoring, you're going to win the championship, and that's the way it was going to go. But once you get there, and the veterans, they know in a hurry if you're not ready, because they'll look down on you and they'll pull you aside and they'll say, kid, you know what, you're in for a long ride and we're not going to give you a break. So uh, if I had to go over and do it all again, that would be the two biggest things I could recommend to anybody.
Hmm. So, I mean, a physically gifted player, and by physically, I mean like from a talent standpoint. I mean, you felt like you could put on the skates, go out there and do your thing. As we all know, when we get up to those higher levels, everyone's pretty darn good. So there is that there's that point where we have to make that decision. And again, I can kind of relate with that is like, I mean, how does this work here at this level? And you said like the veterans would take you aside. Was there ever a conversation with a coach at that time that says, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z? Or were you kind of left on your own to try and figure it out for yourself?
No, you know what, Roger Nielsen. I remember getting into an argument with him one night. My first year in with the Leafs, I was sent to Dallas, and I won the scoring title or led the league in goals. And he came up to me and he said, "You know what? You're never going to play in the NHL." And I said, "What? I led junior in scoring. I broke all the records, and now my first year I'm leading the Central League in scoring. What do you mean I'm not going to play in the NHL?" And he says, "Well, you don't play a 200-foot game." He says, "You're not going to score 50 in the NHL, so you better learn how to play defense." And he taught me right from there that with the how to play defense, what I should be thinking of, and the goals will come. So when I did get called up, I was never called up to be a number one center. I was, when you get called up to the NHL from the minors, you're usually stuck on the fourth line, and so I better learn how to check, because that's the way I'm going to be there. And Roger taught me that, and it stayed with me. And I think that's part of knowing both ends at an early age. It made me a lot better coach when I got to be able to coach.
That's cool. Yeah, because Roger and I also he was the coach in Florida when I got drafted there. So I experienced Roger Nielsen as a coach. That's interesting that we both crossed paths with that. Um, so yeah, so going through, so now you're a player. I mean, you had some good results in the NHL too. I mean, as far as the points, from a points perspective, the one year you did quite well there in Toronto and just couldn't necessarily stick. Was that was that still like, it seems like you kind of started to figure it out. You got some games. Was there a mental aspect to the game? Was it maybe that like somebody up top just didn't like you, or how do you think that all
Well,
went?
I guess it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah.
With me, the one year I had 26 points in 24 games, and I thought I was going great guns. This is it. I've made my breakthrough. And then they called up Stan Weir from Tulsa, um, because he was making 150,000 a year, and they sent me back down because I was making 19.5 or some stupid number back then. And it seemed like every time I got to that stage where I was playing well and scoring, that they would look for somebody bigger and better. And I always thought that the way they thought was, yeah, you know what, we got to get better. So let's get big, but back in the 70s and early 80s, it was a lot about size too. But I mean, so they'd say, let's get let's get try to get better, and we'll get in Walt McKechnie, we'll get in Stan Weir, we'll get in all these other guys, and then we've always got Boudreau to back up because he doesn't mind going to the minors, and he won't balk because he doesn't want to be traded because he wants to be a Leaf, and that's the way I felt it was. But and I never really, I never once complained, and that's probably my problem because you don't get anywhere unless you do some bitching about playing time or what's going on. And I was an easy sell because I just always wanted to be a Leaf, so it didn't matter. I was just going to keep trying.
Right. Um, I got traded to Toronto. You probably don't know my story, but I got traded to Toronto as a first year pro for Kirk Muller. So I ended up
Mhm.
going to the Toronto locker room and didn't know any of the players there, didn't know any of the coaches, was essentially kind of lost, when it got traded out of the AHL, was doing well there and trying to manage, all those new things of being a Toronto Maple Leaf and being an NHL player and still trying to perform on the ice was challenging at 21 for me. You now going on into the coaching ranks and being that guy similar to me that was, trying to go up, trying to make your mark, trying to fit in. Do you have a little bit of a soft spot for those guys now? Like, do you try and go out of your way to make them feel as comfortable as possible? Because we know that transition isn't comfortable a lot of the time.
You mean the kids that are
Yeah.
going up and
Yeah.
down?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's what's one of the things that's made me a better coach is because I think I understand more about um, the ups and downs of everybody because I've been through every situation of the going ups, the comings down, the disappointment of getting sent down, the disappointing of being in the minors, the coming up and wanting to. And when I was, when I in the NHL, when you take that young guy, trying to, just curb his enthusiasm a little bit and make him do the right things to become a real pro. And I thought that was probably my best strength.
That's great. Yeah. I listened to a past interview with you and you spoke about Mike Green when you had him in the minors and you also had him in the NHL and saying that he seemed to respond better, uh, to a pat on the back. And maybe if he wasn't quite so nervous about making mistakes. Could you relate to that as a player as well? Like when you got to that bigger level that you were trying not to screw up as opposed to try to make plays. And maybe if you were in a different environment, that would have given you more opportunity at the higher level.
Maybe I don't know. I tried to just do what the coaches said on the ice. I thought I was a pretty good student in that respect. Uh, but I mean, I wasn't like Mike. Whereas Mike, if I come down the bench and started screaming at him, he would have been a basket case for the rest of the game. So you learned early, so that you had to come up if he was not playing well or something. You grab him and you whisper in his ear that you need more and everything. I was more the kind of guy, and again, it was the 70s where coaches didn't really talk to you, and that if a coach told me I was brutal and everything else, I'd say, yeah, I'm going to show you, and you go the opposite way. So when you get into coaching, the thing you learn is you've got to learn everybody's sort of Achilles heel. And that was mine. If you challenged me, I would take the challenge. But if some guys like Ian Turnbull, you could fine him as much money as you wanted. He didn't care about any of that stuff. He just kept going. But if you took his ice time away, then that would really bother him. So I mean, and it's whether it's yelling at him or patting them on the back or taking ice time away or fining them or doing anything. It's a coach's job to find out what works for every individual because you got to do everything different for everybody. We're not all the same, and we don't all click at the with the same thing. So it's an important thing for a coach to learn about the players. And I always thought it made it one of my best points was to make it a point of talking to every player, making sure they were doing okay. Even sharing a laugh with them every now and again to show that you're human, but to show you care about them, it was really important.
Yeah, that's super interesting because you mentioned sort of back in your era, and we've all, you and I have lived through sort of different areas, me as a player and you as a coach. But the what I heard from back in the day was, yeah, I mean, it was kind of a blanket approach. It almost seemed like back in the 70s, 80s, right? I mean, a coach would have a certain style, and that style would then be kind of forced on the entire group of 20 that's in that locker room. And it seems like that sort of changed and adapted. And like you said, your own personal style is now, hey, I'm going to look at the individual people in this locker room and see how I can get the most out of them. Do you think that evolution of coaching has kind of now taken over a little bit, opposed to what it was back in the 80s?
Absolutely. I mean, when I was playing, players didn't ask any questions, and the coaches really didn't talk to the players. You just did what they said, and usually it was a practice of 3 drills and skating, and that's it. Nowadays, the kids ask questions. They want to know why. Why aren't I on the power play? Why aren't I doing this? They have tons of questions. They want answers, and they want honest answers, and sometimes they don't like what they hear, but they accept it. And I think that's just the evolution of the way society has gone as well. I mean, we all the young people of the world we're asking questions about how to be better and why am I not playing um, above X player, and then you have to tell them. And sometimes it works, or they work harder. They get to the point, or they say, "No, I'm better than that guy," and that's the way it is. I mean, I had a player when I left Lowell, went to Manchester named Yannick Lahou, and talented, but only wanted to play his way, and there was no way you were going to change him. He was going to be a lazy player and hope to get a lot of points. And you tell him, you're not going to play, you're not going to make it, nobody's going to want you. And he wouldn't listen. He eventually gets traded 3 or 4 times and goes to Europe at 23 years old. And whereas this kid could have played if he had a different mindset.
Yeah, mindset. That's such a big word in this era, and it seems like that the physical realm has been explored. And I know through your tenure, you've seen it. Even as a player, right? That now we started training in the off season. Now we're starting to get into nutrition and diet, and these guys are just finely tuned machines. And I think the next level of the athlete seems like it's what can we do with their heads? How do we get our head right and our mind right, and even from a practice perspective, how to incorporate these mindset traits that allow us to continue to want to get better. Is that something that you think most of the coaches are looking at now as one of the game changers or one of the ways you can get a competitive edge?
You're talking about getting into their heads and
Well, just the mindset
mindsets.
side of how to get the most out of your players, how even from a culture side within the team, to believe you have a competitive advantage, maybe because you're doing things a little different, thinking a little different.
Well, I guess to answer that is I don't really know the answer, but what I do know is that you individually, again, have to find out. Some guys don't have don't have a great education. You got to talk at a different level than a guy that's gone to Harvard and knows a little bit more of the ways of the world, especially guys that go to college and versus guys that go to junior. Even though now junior, they offer college scholarships and everything else once you're done. We never even heard of it when I was playing. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I mean, we're always trying to understand what the player is thinking because it's important. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
if you are talking to a guy and he doesn't understand what you're talking about, you may as well be talking to the air. But if he can understand the idea of what you're trying to get across, then all of a sudden maybe he can go out and do it.
Sure. You mentioned that the players come in now and they ask more questions, which I think is great. And I imagine that the communication skills of a head coach or an assistant coach now are pretty imperative along with that, like you said, to get that message through. In some of the interviews that I've had in the past with either Jared Bednar or Brad Larson or some of these guys that are in the NHL, the level of accountability now goes up on the player, right? Because you ask a question, you might get an answer you don't like, but it's still something from the head coach, from the big boss that now wants you to do something. Does that now separate some of these players, like from the guys who are actually now accountable to what you want them to do and are willing to go and do it on a consistent basis, and those that won't?
Well, you know what? If they're not accountable, they don't play. It's pretty simple in today's world. I mean, and there's a level of accountability. If you're Sidney Crosby, you can get away with doing some things a few times that aren't conducive. I'd use Connor McDavid as more of an example because he's a younger player and he's so great offensively. And when I watch him not doing his job in the defensive zone and they get scored on, then I mean, he's going to be okay with it, because he's probably his offense is going to be much his good is going to be much better than his bad. So sometimes you take it, but you make him aware of it, and you want him to get better, but you're not going to sit Connor McDavid. Whereas if you're a fourth line guy and you go out and you're not going to score 100 points in a year, but you make that mistake defensively, and you better be accountable or you're not going to play. That's the way you're going to play, is not lose your man. Like, I mean, I watched yesterday's games and no one's mentioned it on TV. I guess nobody wants to be the bad guy. Like, or the other night, Kadri totally missed his assignment. That's why that young Finn scored. Like, I mean, they duplicated on the same guy, which was not Kadri's job. And but they, like, the announcers all said, well, that guy slipped his coverage. We didn't slip his coverage. But I mean, if this Nazem had already got a goal and assist during the course of the game and was playing great, he's their second line center, he'll get away with that. But if that was their fourth line center, then, you know, you could probably see them looking to make a change the next game if they had an opportunity to have a next game.
Right. You talk about a young Connor McDavid, or, you know, an older Sidney Crosby now at this stage, and as a head coach in the NHL, having to manage superstars and also the personalities of those superstars. And there are different levels of, you know, maturity and mental development themselves. Just because they're amazing athletes doesn't necessarily mean that they're, you know, they're ready for leadership positions or know how to win, or some of these nuances of the game. How do you go about, you know, teaching a young Alex Ovechkin what it takes to maybe go beyond scoring the 50 goals, but also understanding what it takes to be a winner or to be a good leader?
Well, I mean, it was difficult but doable, because you had the fact that he didn't speak good English at the time and he was Russian. And when he came over here as a great scorer in Europe. So I mean, defense wasn't really his forte but I mean, we'd have to show him on video. Like, I went through different things of showing him privately on video, embarrassing him a little bit in front, but it was a fine line of embarrassing somebody and on video and making him say, I don't want to play for him. So I mean, it's you have to find, again, it goes back to that communication thing, and getting to know the guy personally, what would work with him and what wouldn't work with him. I think if you look at Alex, when they won the cup, he became a much better player over time, because he started to realize what the cup meant. When you're 22 and you're the best player in the world, and you're winning Hart trophies and scoring 65 goals a year, it doesn't really matter in his mind. I'll get a chance to win the cup, I'll get a chance. But when you go now 10 years before you're getting that chance, you start to say, I don't need the criticism every day of not winning the cup and being out of here the next day after we lose out to go to the play in the World Championship. So he learned, and it was my job to help him learn. But it's also, again, it's like a good teacher and a bad teacher in school. I mean, to me, you have to find out what makes that guy learn, and what is he going to retain, rather than yelling and screaming and just going at it one way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to get into trust, but first, I think we'll transition maybe into your career. So, I mean, you left the game as a player, got right back into it as a coach, and won a championship in Mississippi, and that was the year before we ended up playing together in Lowell there when you got the head coach job in Lowell. As a coach now, you're in the East Coast League there. You know, how hard is it to balance, even maybe more so in the minor leagues? I'm not sure, maybe you can speak to this, but balancing the development of the players, because they're not where they want to be either, so they want to improve, yet also wanting to win, because it seems like as a coach, winning gives you opportunity to move on to the next level.
Well, and I think it depends on what league you're in. Like, when we're in the East Coast League, I'm in Biloxi, Mississippi. There's not a lot of scouts that come to every game, and so it was about winning. But I had enough affiliates that I wrote reports on every player after every game. So I mean, 2 or 3 times a year, LA would come down and see their players. And the biggest thing with me was giving them ice time and just, correcting them. And that's how I got the job in Lowell, because we did good in Mississippi. And what I realized here is as all these young coaches, you're going to grow and get better every year. My first year in Lowell, I remember telling Steve Sterling, who was my assistant there, like, I mean, I apologized to him maybe 5 years ago, maybe less than that, because I did the power play, I did the penalty killing, and I wouldn't give anybody any other jobs, because in Mississippi or in the low minors, and I was there for 3 years, you do everything yourself. So it's what you learn, right? I mean, you come up, and I had to learn how to give other guys responsibility. And I mean, it took me a while. And then all of a sudden, then when you get to the NHL, somebody else, an assistant does the power play, an assistant does the penalty killing. I would do all the pre-scouting and everything else. But delegating, it was a difficult thing for me when I first got to the American Hockey League. And it's amazing how much you learn from that first year to, till 20 years later when you're coaching in the NHL, let alone drills. I mean, nobody's telling you drills in the American League, but then, or in the East Coast League, you're working on your drills from the 90s and the 80s, and then you get there in the NHL, go to training camp, and you see Andy Murray doing all these new drills, which you take and you add with yours, and hopefully you just build up a book of drills and ways to teach, and then you've got your philosophy on what wins and what doesn't win, and you go with that way.
Is there, as a player, yeah, experienced as a player, I mean, every level you go up, there's sort of a leveling up process, which you've kind of spoke to already, as you're kind of comfortable, you win a championship, now you're in this new league, you're in the AHL. Is there a little bit of a feeling out portion for yourself to understand that, yeah, I'm good enough to coach here. Yes, I know how to coach here. I belong here. Does that happen as far as a coach as well as it does with a player?
100%. Like when I went to my first training camp in LA, Andy Murray was doing an awful lot of the things that I believed in. And you'd go home at night and you go, hey, I can do this, because what I was thinking, even though it was at the East Coast League level, is what the NHL guys are doing. So I'm on the right path, and I was believing that was the right thing to do. So I mean, you start with that. He makes you believe, and then you just keep growing and learning and learning.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of the biggest keys, because you talked about how the players are changing, and you must have seen that from your first years there in the AHL, and even your first time in Washington there to what the players are like this year. I would imagine the personalities and the human beings inside the hockey players have changed. So you need to adapt with that change in the personnel, I would assume.
Well, if you don't change, you don't last. I mean, I'm 65 years old and still hope to get another job, but it's because I think like a young guy. I don't think I think like an old man sitting in a rocking chair, and that's the whole adapting thing. And I hope I mean, that people think the same way, that I can adapt. I mean, I had great relationships last year with the young guys, and I don't think that'll change. Maybe I'm just not mature enough yet to act older. But I mean, I think I'm a young guy at heart, and I think I can deal with those young guys.
Awesome. I'm going to turn back to this year, and maybe I'll put you on the spot. Maybe I won't. I totally remember. I forgive you if you don't remember. But when we were there with you, I was your leading scorer that year. I don't know if you remember or not. And I remember Steve being
I
there.
remember.
Yeah, I think I had 30. And then they called the LA Kings. I was down there essentially all year, and the LA Kings called me up for their playoff run, essentially as a black ace. So I missed the last few games with Lowell. The Kings got eliminated in the first round. You guys in Lowell had won the first round. We won 3 straight over St. John's, and then I came back down. And
So it was
then,
you.
yeah, exactly. Well,
Okay.
yeah, there you go. So maybe you had this right. So it was one of those things you mentioned yourself, right? That you as a player, sometimes you didn't maybe speak up enough, or you wish you would have maybe scratched and clawed a little bit.
Hmm.
I totally remember you as being an open door guy. And I remember you calling me in and, asking how whatever an off day went or what we got up to. And that was definitely your personality. So there wasn't I wasn't fearful of going into your office, but when I came back down after being with the Kings, I ended up being a fourth line role. Like I never got on the ice, and you played me a few times on the power play, and it was just, for me, it was really shocking because I didn't know essentially what happened, yet I didn't have the maturity or the parts, or maybe I just had a chip on my shoulder that I didn't walk in that office and ask you why. Do you remember why? Like, I almost wondered if it was like a thing that came down from the top with the LA Kings and you weren't supposed to or something. That was something that always baffled me, and I was just wondering, curious about
The Kings ruined you.
it.
I can't remember at the time, except the only thing I can think of possibly is we were rolling,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to change things. We had won 3 games in a row against St. John's, and Luongo was incredible during those 3 games, and then we played Providence, and I think they beat us 4 straight. I don't know. Uh, I don't know the reason, Jason, right now.
Mhm.
I'd have to look at like old things and see. But I mean, the only thing I can think of is that I didn't want to upset the apple cart because we were doing well.
Yeah,
That would
no,
have
I
been my
understand.
only thing. And the Kings did the same thing 2 years later. They sent 7 players down after they got eliminated, and it just screwed up the whole chemistry of the team. But I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case here because,
Right.
but you like to keep things going. The same coaches are creatures of habit that if you win, you don't change lineups, you do those kind of things. So, that would be the only reason because when you were here, you were our leading scorer, you were doing well. And, so I have no idea why I did that. Maybe I
No
had a
worries.
brain fart.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just, 'cause one of those questions that you have in your back of your head, and I ended up signing somewhere else the next year, and we just never played together again, so never had an opportunity to ask you. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I thought I would. I would like to talk just about, so then you go from Lowell, you go to Manchester, and I was talking about trust and building trust with a player, and I had Steve Kelly on as a past guest, and
Um,
he was a really big fan of yours, as I'm sure you know, and he said, you were one of the best guys he ever played for, and would go through a wall for you. And one of the stories that he told was, he said it was a night before a game, and they happened to be sitting at the bar, him and a buddy of his. And I'm not telling this out of school. He said this publicly already. It was nothing. It's pretty harmless, but it was past curfew, and he said, lo and behold, you walked in behind them. And he said they kind of like did the little shoulder check and wasn't sure if you saw them or not, but you just kept walking and kind of did your thing and left. And so they didn't really know, right? You didn't say anything to them at the time, but the next day at practice at pregame skate, everyone came in for pregame skate, and you made this announcement that it was going to be no pregame skate today, that some of you guys might need a little extra rest, so go get your extra rest and come ready tonight. And Steve Killer said that, he had one of his best games of the season that day, and he said you guys won. He said he was on fire. Like he said, he like for that moment, like he earned so much respect, or you earned so much respect from him, because he said so many coaches could have handled that way differently. Was that just is that an example of how you would build trust with your players? Like, instead of doing it in the papers or sitting a guy out, to allow them, an opportunity to show that and prove that, yeah, okay, they made a mistake, and they can make it right.
I think so. At that time, that would have been something that I would have done. Years later, same thing happened with 2 guys that I played with that now I coached, and they were out after curfew, and I sat them out a game. And I just thought at that point it was the right thing to do because I played with them. If I hadn't have sat them out, people would have thought that they're getting away with, just because
Mhm.
they knew who I was and they were my friend. With Steve Kelly, it's a different. Like, he's one of those guys that I could tell him, "You stink, you're awful," and he's going to look me in the eye and he's going to go, "Yeah, I'll show you." And I think that would have been more of it. Yeah, like he said, okay, he let me go, but he also let me know that I knew that he was out, so I better perform for him. And Steve was one of those guys, when I said earlier, and one of my favorite players. Maybe not a lot of other people's favorite players as a coach, because he took really reckless penalties and all the time. But I knew that his good was, if he wasn't slashing and hacking and playing in everybody's face, then he wasn't being Steve Kelly. and I needed Steve Kelly to be Steve Kelly. So I never worried about if he took a minor or two a game, because his good was going to outweigh his bad. Now, if it didn't, there would have been different ways to handle that. But again, always one of my favorite players. Because he had that will to win and that will to compete. And, for a scorer, he would fight anybody. He would, that's why he's a cop now, I think. But he'd get right in everybody's face. And I loved that part about him, because he was so competitive and he wanted to win at all costs. And, but I remember that now that you're talking about it. I mean, it's amazing how things slip your mind. But I'm 100% sure it was because I wanted to let him know, like in the dressing room, very rarely, and you can probably attest this, that I come in and say you and point guys out. I would say it as a team, knowing that the players knew who I was talking about, and they would feel better that I didn't center them out, and they would respect that, and they'd usually play a little harder for me the next period.
Hey there, everybody. Just a quick break from the conversation. We'll get you right back to Bruce. But once again, I want to take on the sports nets. I want to take on the TSNs, the ESPNs, the athletics. I'm so jacked that we are competing in this space against some big, big players. And we are doing this this is like David versus Goliath right now. And we're David, and we're rocking, and we're rolling. And we are only doing it because you are choosing to listen and tune in. And you are also helping others find it by sharing the stuff I put out online, by talking with your friends, by reviewing on iTunes and rating it and talking about it. So please continue to do your part, and let's be part of this movement, and let's keep moving up the ranks here. I absolutely love it. It inspires me, it gets me motivated, and gets me excited. So help me help more people, and do your part. Cheers, guys. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, that's a great way to go about it. With your championship teams, I mean, you end up going to Hershey and you won another championship, and lo and behold, right, like a season and a half, well, you go to the finals again the next year, and then the season after that, you get your opportunity in the NHL. At that AHL level, I know I asked you this earlier, but I think it is a bit of a different beast, because the East Coast League isn't the AHL. In the AHL, you are trying to develop individual players to make that top team, right? You're trying to give them assets. So in doing that, and you're developing 20, 21, 20-year-old, 2-year-old kids, they're allowed to make mistakes there, I assume. I mean, like, that's part of the process, but mistakes also don't always correlate with winning. As a AHL coach, how do you balance that, knowing that for you as an individual, Bruce Boudreau, who wants to go to the NHL, a Calder Cup's going to look real nice on my resume, but I also got to do my job here of maybe, getting these younger guys up to grade so they can go to the NHL, which might not lead to wins in the win column. How do you balance that?
Well, it's sort of tough, but I mean, the good teams and the good players learn from their mistakes. And so, I mean, that's how you win Calder Cups, is because these good young players, they learn. Like I said, I had Yannick Lehoux, he didn't learn. And that's one of the reasons, even though we'd get over 100 points every year in Manchester, when push came to shove, I mean, guys like that, no matter, and you try the same things that you've done in the past, and they weren't working with a guy like him, so it becomes difficult. But you talk about the Hershey teams. I mean, we had young players, and they were good young players, but they all paid attention, and they were a special group. And because a lot of them made the NHL, and sometimes you get lucky and you get a special group of guys, and they're just, they want to get there, they want to pay attention, and they want to do the right things. That's when it makes it easy. What it makes it tough is when the NHL team says, "Hey, this young guy was a second-round pick, and you've got to play him 16 minutes a night every night." And so you try to do that because you want to do what the NHL team wants you to do, but at the same time, you got to be cognizant that your other players around you, whether it's a veteran or whether it's a young guy, if they're playing much better and they know you're giving this guy the ice time, then they're sitting there, they're going, that doesn't make sense. Like, I mean, how can we play? How can we win if you're giving this guy all the ice time? And because you have to, and the guys that are playing much better are sitting on the bench. It's a difficult thing. And the one thing that George McPhee was great at, he would phone Doug Youngston. He said, "I don't care if he's a first rounder or 10th rounder." He says, "You play the best players to help you win," which made it so much easier for me.
I was just going to say that if with that dot connect, now that you've been around the game so long and you've probably seen both sides of it, the GM that wants to stick handle you and your decisions, with the prospects that you're allowed to play, and then also when you're allowed to give free reign and play the best players possible. I mean, I'll go back to Scott Nickel there with the Nashville Predators, and that's one of their tenets in that organization is that bring up the best player, because we want that culture and that locker room to be of such, right? That you're accountable for your results, and we're going to reward the guys that are doing what we want them to do. Did you find it easier working under that environment as far as just building that philosophy and that culture in that locker room when you could reward the guys for doing the right things?
It makes it an awful lot easier on the coach, because then you can make players way more accountable. I mean, like I said, it was Kevin something. I even forget the assistant GM's name in LA now, maybe because I wanted to forget it. But he would send down, play this guy this much, this guy this much, this guy this much, and he was always worried about development. And they were good players. We had a lot of good players, but at the same time, other guys sitting on the bench were playing better than these guys, and they would go, "What the heck's going on here?" And it made it more difficult. But when you went to Hershey and they say play the best players, and now the first round pick is not playing, he's coming into your office and saying, "Why aren't you playing?" And you're pointing out the reasons that they're not playing. Now you've got the talent. You either get better and do it, or you're not going to play. And even in Hershey, they would send guys like Michael Neuwirth was sent to the East Coast League, and other guys that were sent to the East Coast League just because they weren't pulling up their socks. And it made South Carolina better because they wanted to get out of there, but it made us better too, because they were now accountable for their actions. And I think that's the perfect way an American League team to an NHL team to their East Coast League affiliate should work. And otherwise, if you keep giving this first round pick from 2016 that you've now signed, and because you don't want to look bad making a first round pick mistake, giving him 20 minutes of ice time every night, and the team's not successful, it's not only going to look bad on you, but the players are going to resent him. And that becomes inlays a problem in the room, and you don't want that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, from a player's perspective, that is what you need sometimes, right? Instead of just that carte blanche, that there maybe is a fine line there too, right? That you just don't get ice time. You got to earn your ice time, and that maturation of that, maybe that first round pick is good to watch and earn a spot in there, and to to find his way to the NHL instead of being given his opportunity. One of the interesting things I thought was hard to manage, and I can imagine it was maybe a bit hard to manage as a coach. When you're at that AHL level, almost nobody really wants to be there, right? Like, you're grateful for being there, but you want to be somewhere else, and everyone's trying to get to the show. And when you're building a championship team in the minors, now you're having this pecking order within the organization, because you don't want to be playing behind somebody. You have to fill a role, to be able to be a part of that puzzle piece that's going to get you that championship, and to get guys to buy into the idea that when you win, you will be rewarded as an individual is really difficult. Yet time and time again, you can see it happening. Guys win championships, and that team, those guys go on. A lot of guys go on to the NHL. They'll go on to extra contracts. And same thing for you as a coach. How do you teach a player to believe in that process, that, when we win, you will get what you want, even if you don't think like the ice time might be right, or your role isn't quite what you want it to be?
There's a couple of ways you just keep preaching it. But one of the things I did a lot, and it was mostly in Manchester and Hershey, is I would show the guys the roster of championship teams in the American League, and you can almost to a point go to almost every championship American League team and see within a year or two, 7 to 8 of those players are playing in the National Hockey League. And it's not always the leading scorers. It's not always the best players. It's guys that played their role. And we did the same thing in Hershey when I was lucky enough. One of the reasons when I got called up to coach the following year, that we started to have success was because I had coached 7 of them in Hershey, and they weren't the leading scorers. Dave Steckel was a fourth line player. Boyd Gordon was a fourth line player. Brooks Lake was a third line player. But these guys knew their roles and knew how to play the game, and that's why they made it, because they balanced out the lineup. They weren't going to take Alex Ovechkin's place, or they weren't going to take Semen's place or Backstrom's place. So they knew how to back up and play their roles, and it was one of the main reasons. Like the second year, we got 121 points in the NHL. That's pretty good.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, no, that's amazing. You mentioned earlier about that, Steve Kelly is one of your favorite players. And I always wondered that, as far as, there's a lot of players listening right now, and they want to be that player, that coach's favorite player. Is there like a little ingredient? You mentioned competitive, and I would imagine that would stand out for any coach anywhere. You want guys that want to compete. Is that the quickest way to a coach's heart, is to just show you want it more than other people?
Um, that's one of the ways. Probably the biggest way is responsibility. Like I could, if like in any league, like in Anaheim, I'll go back to them first. Andrew Cogliano, I knew I could put him on the ice with Saku Koivu and Daniel Winnick, and good things were going to happen. There wasn't they may get scored on or they may score. Those were guys that you knew you could be responsible with here. In Washington, it was the Steckles, the Gordons, these third and fourth lines. Coaches love these guys that sacrifice and give everything to the team and work. Jay Beagle was perfect at it, and they didn't ask for anything. They just went out and did their job. They could push practice, because the Stars a lot of times don't push practice. You need your worker bees to come out and make everybody else work. Jay Beagle was the best I've ever seen at it, and I'm sure he did the same thing with Vancouver, even though he's 33 years old. But that's who coaches really gravitate towards, is those guys that block shots and do all of the little things but don't get any attention. I had one guy in Hershey, Quentin Lang, never scored more than 10, 12 goals. And the next year, I called him up, and he spent the whole year in Washington as he would block shots with his face, with every part of his body. He was hurt a lot of the time, but the players grew to love him. Coaches love that kind of thing. And those are the kind of players I think we gravitate to. Everybody loves the guys that score 50 goals. But I mean, if they're good guys,
Yeah.
some guys could score 50 goals and then be real dinks and, not care about the rest of the team, not care about what happens. I think a guy like Alex Semen was more in that line. But the grunge workers and the worker bees, they care about the team first and foremost, and that's why coaches like them.
How special is it? You mentioned that sometimes, the best player in air quotes, meaning the guy who gets the most points or the most goals, those guys aren't the guys that push practice sometimes. And then sometimes they are, though, right? Like, I mean, I've heard the stories about Sidney Crosby, that he's the guy that, drives, is the engine on that team, and he's also happens to be the best player. You were surrounded by some stars. I mean, how important or how amazing is it when that happens? When your best player is also your hardest worker? Like, imagine like building a team around somebody like that would be real special.
Well, that's how you win cups. When you get the luck of the draw and your best player is also the hardest worker. I grew up, didn't win a cup with him, but Daryl Sittler, who was the captain of the Leafs, he was also the hardest worker on the team. And I remember being called up one day, and practice was over. We all worked hard and everything. But 30 seconds after the last whistle was blown, I was off the ice. And he came running down the hall after me, grabbed me by the collar, and said, "Son, listen, you're going to get nowhere. You're going to be sent down again. I am the best player on this team, and I'm the first out, and I'm the last guy to leave. You better learn how to work." And I've taken that's 1976, and I've taken that in my mind, remembered it for, 45 years now. And, but it was as good of as advice as I've ever gotten from anybody. And he was right. I was done. I wasn't doing the extra. And now you see, when there's been times when other players, uh, you know, like this, when the stars are aligned and you get that great player that he works on his game all the time, then you've got something special. Sometimes you get the stars, they want to get through practice, then they're the first ones off. And though they lose a little bit of respect, whether they know it or don't know it, from the players, from the other players, because the other guys are working so hard to get to half as good as they are, and they can't do it because they're just not as good. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's you know.
A lot of these coaches want to get to where you've been to, and deal with these NHL stars and the personalities. At times, I wouldn't say at times, I think that the honest reality is that the coach is more expendable than that star player in a lot of circumstances. Yet you need that star player to be the person we're talking about, right? For you to have success as a team and for you to win the championships you want to win. How difficult is it to manage, or how much do you push on those guys? Because you don't want to lose them, right? You need them to have them. And a lot of times those guys even understand how much clout they have, yet still, maintain that relationship. Is that a slippery slope sometimes?
You got to handle it a little delicately. Of course, like when I had Getzlaf and Perry in their prime in Anaheim, I would call them in and ask for their advice one-on-one. You know, give them a little bit of information that wasn't really vital, but it made them feel important. And I had Getzlaf was our captain, but I had him in and asking him questions almost at least once a week, for probably more than that. And I think it made them feel special. It made me feel that our relationship was working, that they could come in and talk to me. There was times like after a while that Ryan would, if we had a really bad period, Ryan might be the last guy off the ice after the period, and he'd say, "Coach, don't go in. I'll take care of this." And I'd say, "Okay, Ryan, it's your team. You do it. You do what you have to do." And there was times where he'd say, "I can't do this because I'm not playing good either." And you can only do it when you're the star players acknowledge the fact that they're playing good and they're not getting the support from the other guys. But Getzlaf was great at that, and I always will use him as an example because he was as good as I've ever had doing that.
That's really cool. And you even talking about that, having him be the captain and having him, be the leader. It's his team, as you called it. At the NHL level, does it depend on the organizations as far as the ones you've been involved in? As far like who says who the letters are? Is that your choice? Who's the season A's, or is that a collective kind of decision coming from up top, or does it depend on the organization?
Well, in the one organization that I had a sort of something to do with is we traded Chris Clark, who was the Washington's captain, to Columbus for Jason Chimera, and then we were without a captain. And I went, and Pittsburgh had just made Sidney Crosby captain, and it was the way that they were going with the young superstars being captain, whether you were ready for it or not ready for it. And I told George, I said, I think it's Alex's team now. He's going to be here. He just signed a 13-year deal, so he's going to be here forever. I think we should make him captain. Now, being from Russia, I don't think Alex wanted to be the captain. He wanted to be the best player. He wanted to be the leader. All of those things were great, but he didn't know the little off-ice things that you have to do as a captain. And it wasn't a problem because Mike Knuble would come in and he would sort of be the voice of captaincy, of organizing things and everything else. Alex was the leader on the ice and Mike was the leader in the dressing room type thing. But the other places, Mikko Koivu was captain for a long time. I wasn't going to come in and upset that apple cart, even though they have to make a new captain next year. And Ryan Getzlaf was already the captain in Anaheim, and he wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. So all those numbers or letters were intact, which is good. I'd rather them be intact than me have to come in here and take the C off Joe Thornton and put it on somebody else just for the sake of it. I don't think it would have been a good thing to do.
Right. Trust of the players is paramount, I think, in this day and age. They need to believe that you want them to be better and be their best player. How does that also correlate with your coaching staff when you come in as a head coach and you, I assume, have the ability to handpick who you want to be surrounded by? When you create that team, what are you looking for, and how are you building that puzzle?
Are you talking about how the coaches
Yeah, the
or
assistant
players?
coaching team now, right? Because I would assume as a head coach, you have some say in who comes in and fills those roles.
Well, I did in Minnesota. Chuck Fletcher said, you've got carte blanche. Pick your assistants. Pick this, whatever you want. And I think for me, the number one thing is loyalty. Like, I mean, you don't want assistant coaches that are looking to take your job. I mean, you want loyalty, and you want guys you can trust, and that was number one for me in Minnesota. So what I did is I picked my best friend growing up was John Anderson, was a very good coach in his own right. I think he won 6 different titles in the American League and in the International League. So to me, he was a no-brainer. And he was an offensive guy that knew how to run the power play. So that was fine. I picked him. Then the next guy, it's always tougher to find a guy that's been around defensemen and is the forwards there seem to be an easier find. But I looked around, and Scott Niedermayer phoned me and told me who I was with in Anaheim, and he told me that Scott Stevens might want to get into coaching. And so I phoned Scott, and I drove up to his place in New Jersey. We got along tremendously. We had the same ideas, the same thought process. So he wanted to try it, and so I made him the assistant coach. Unfortunately, they had such a great spot in New Jersey and everything, and their kids were going to school in New York, that after a year, he missed that more than he wanted to coach. But for that year, that's the only time I've ever got a chance to pick 2. Every other year, when I went up to Washington, they were already there. When I went to Anaheim, I picked one, and Bob Murray picked the other. And then when he'd fire him, he would pick the next guy. I never got a chance to pick another guy. So I mean, yeah, interesting. But that's a story that I could talk for 5 hours about. But I don't think it would go well over here right now. So we'll wait till I write the book on that one.
Sure.
But I think it's important that I think the head coach, when he comes in, there might be somebody that the GM wants to keep, but you should be able to pick everybody else, I think. And with the loyalty, the last thing you want, to me as a coach, is the GM picking his best friend or something to be the assistant, because they're phoning each other on the phone all night long, and you don't know what's being said. And I mean, it happened one time, and to me, and you could see, like, the one assistant would be saying something in the day, and if he was disagreeing with me, and then the GM the next day would come in and use the same words verbatim and say the same thing, and you knew where he was getting it from all the time, and that didn't make for a great relationship.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, because I mean that has to be a tight knit group. You have to trust each other, right? So like you said, loyalty would be big there. You never mentioned the name Bob Wood, and I just thought that was somebody that seemed to be with you, even at the East Coast level, right?
He was the one guy I picked all the time. Like, I mean,
Okay.
initially I picked him. He didn't want to coach right away. He wanted to still play. So when he was ready, I picked him to be my assistant in Hershey. And then when we moved one guy on in Washington, I picked Bob to come up with me in Washington. And then when I went to Anaheim, Bob was let go in Washington. I brought him to Anaheim as well. And then he went to junior after that when he was let go in Anaheim. And he went to Buffalo for a year. Then once he was let go there, and Scott Stevens left, I brought him to Minnesota, and he's still there.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because I have been looking into that recently, and it seems like, to me, it must be like again, that comfort level, that trust must be paramount, right? I mean, that's something that you want to keep close. You want to trust guys and know that they got your back and you got theirs. And once you get those relationships, I mean, why would you interchange them? I want to, before we're running out of time, and I definitely want to talk about you making that first step to the NHL, because I think from a human standpoint, there's a lot of stuff that's going to go on there. I talked briefly about my experience getting traded to Toronto and the human aspect of that, all these different dynamics that's going on outside of just being a hockey player. So you get the phone call in Hershey with the interim, designation, which I want to talk about too. So you get your chance in the NHL for the first time in an interim scenario, and you're walking into an NHL locker room with, the likes of Alex Ovechkin and Nicholas Backstrom and these guys. And now you need to be Bruce Boudreau, and you need to believe in who Bruce Boudreau is and that you can be successful at this level. What was that like? What was your mindset like walking into that environment?
Well, it was twofold. Being a guy that's been in the minors a long time, the first question I asked George McPhee is, when this internship is done, do I get my job back in Hershey? Because I mean, you see so many interim coaches, and then once they're let go at the end of the year, and somebody else comes in, they no longer have a job. So I wanted to make sure that I still had a job. But the first thing, that it was funny. I walked in the dressing room and I looked around, and I'll even go before that. I asked the assistants when I got in there. I said, "Well, let's just go with your systems, and let's go from there." And then I went back in the office and I said, "The hell with it. This might be only my only chance." I went back in. I said, "Guys, I've changed everything. I'm going to run the practice this way. They have to hear it all from me. They have to learn my voice right now. So we're doing it. Everything changed." And then I walked into the room and looked around. I said, "Oh my God, I'm coaching Alex Ovechkin," and it was pretty daunting. But when I got on the ice, the first thing I did, I had to get the respect. I think I would have got the respect of everybody. Well, because of those 7 players that I coached, probably when I wasn't around. They're the guys that didn't know me going, "What's this guy like? What's this guy like?" And they would have said good things. But the first thing I did was when Alex screwed up a drill, as I stopped it and gave him crap. And I think that was such a big deal because the players thought, okay, he's not intimidated and he's doing things his way. We're going to watch. And I think Alex enjoyed it because I don't know if the previous coach had ever called him out at all. And so calling Alex out in the first practice was, I think, a huge thing for me. And then the second biggest thing that happened to me with this group was we played Philadelphia 2 days after I got hired, and we were doing the power play meeting. And again, dumb me, I'm running the power play. And but I said, "Okay, listen, Alex, I don't want you to play where everybody knows he's played. I want you to play in the middle." He goes, "Why, coach?" And I said, "Well, here's the thing. We're going to put Nick Backstrom on the sidewall, who was a first-year player and wasn't playing much, and I want to put Mike Green on where you stand, because what's going to happen? I watch Philadelphia enough that they're going to all cover you. Okay, they're going to have 2 guys on you in the slot. So we're going to fake that pass and give it to Green, and then Green will shoot it in the empty net, and we'll score a goal." So at the 4-minute mark, they get a penalty. I tell these guys what to do, and they go out and they do it perfectly, and Mike scores a goal, and they all turn around, and I said, "See, I know my crap, I know my stuff." And I think it was just a real big point in them getting to say, "Hey, listen, let's listen to this guy." So, I mean, it could have gone wrong. We might never have scored a goal, and I would have looked like a jerk, but we got lucky and we scored right away.
That's really cool. I think it's brilliant too, your first question, to George McPhee to say, "Hey, am I going to have my job?" Because sometimes having that plan B allows you to open yourself up and be who you really are, because you're not being protective, right? You're like, "Okay, I'm all in." Did you have the verbal go ahead to have carte blanche over the systems and to rock and roll? I mean, obviously you went through with it, but was that the directive from the get-go?
No, George said, "You coach the team the way you want to coach. Hope you're here a long time." And that's all I got, all we really talked about. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to run with it." I mean, he had been down to Hershey. He saw we won the cup the last year, and the year before, and then went to the finals the next year. And he's been in the room when I talking to the players and doing the thing. So he knew what I was all about, and that I can get like I work a lot on, if you remember, like emotional stuff. I might not know the systems as well as anybody else and the ins and outs, but I thought I was pretty emotional, straight from the heart kind of talker, and it really resonated with players. And so George liked that aspect of my coaching, and I mean that's still what I do today. I think I got less hair, but that's the way it is. I still do it.
Yeah, it's people first. I know that you were at that NHL coaches conference a little while ago. I think it was 2019, and that was Travis Green opened up and he said the person before the player, and that really resonated with me because he says sometimes it's hard to do, to put the player, but I mean the person before the player. But when you do, he's like you're in that trust and you get the respect, and they're going to go to bat for you. And I think that you've emulated that your entire coaching career. Just to put a bow on that first season, and we're running out of time here. To be from a minor league coach, to step into that environment, to turn that team around, to then winning the Jack Adams, like, was that just like mind blowing for you? Like, and at what point did you think, holy smokes, like this is where I belong and this is where I'm going to stay? Like, how did that whole year come together?
Well, I never had the confidence to say this is where I'm going to stay. I mean, I've always been when you've been in the minors. I think before that it was like almost 33 years in the minors. You don't have the confidence that you're the best, but you have the work ethic that you try to be the best. But it was we just started winning, and I remember telling them that in camp I thought you guys were a great team. I don't know why they were dead last when I picked them up. They were 30th out of 30 teams. And we just kept rising and rising and rising. And then we needed to win 12 out of the last 13 games. And we did to make the playoffs by one to win the division. And we had to win the last 7. And we won the last 7 to win the division by 1 point. And that was you don't even know it when you're going through it, how you look 10 years later and you go, how the hell did you do that? Like, I mean, or how did we do that as a team and end up with 94 points when we had like 9 after 21 games. I don't even think we had 9. I think it was 6 points after 21 games. And then you look back and the guys bought in, the goaltending was great. The young guys like Mike Green and so far it's just he scored 18 goals that year, and they felt like they could do anything, which is the way they felt in Hershey the previous year, and they just built on that. They were really good players that didn't know how good they were. I think I helped let them know that they were really good players, because the one thing I said after every game that we won is, I told you, you're a good team. You're a good team. Believe it. You're a good team. You're going to be a great team. And they started, as the years kept going, they kept believing that. And, I've been using that sort of theme for every year I've coached. So, I mean, making them believe that they're maybe better than they really are, or making them believe that they're as good as they really are, was really important.
That's amazing stuff. You mean, you've been an amazing guest. I knew you would be. And I think that's a great way to tie this one off, because belief and confidence in sports, well, in anything, in any walk of life, is really allows you, the athlete, the person, the ability to step into their potential. I think that applies to coaches as well, having that belief, and you needed to have that belief in you to walk in through those doors and turn the whole practice around and say, no, this is going to be my show. And here we are, years and years later, and what a great career you have to show for it. So Gabby, Bruce, thanks so much for taking the time today and sharing all this wisdom and experience with the listeners. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks so much. And hopefully I'll be able to do it next year after coaching another year somewhere.
That's right. I wish you all the best with that. And I'm sure someone will pick you up. Thanks so much.
It's great. Great talking to you, Jason. Take care.
Hey there, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking with us till the end. I mean, how could you not, I guess, with a guy like Bruce on the airways there. He is entertaining and he's fun. There's so many memories of him. And honestly, at the time, and he's the first one to admit it, and there's lots of players that would echo me, that when he stepped foot into the AHL, I would not have thought, here's the guy with 15 years of the NHL in front of him as a coach. Like, that wasn't my first impression, and not because he wasn't good at his job. It was just because he is so unassuming in the way he looks and the way he talks. Like, he's not Pat Quinn. He's not
Mike Keenan. He's not, Barry Trotz. These guys kind of have a way about them that's a bit intimidating, and there's a presence. And then Bruce kind of feels like he's, somebody that is your next door neighbor and is coming and hanging out in your living room. And that was kind of the feeling when he came to Lowell. And we'd be on the road, and his shirt would be untucked, or he'd have a mustard stain on his tie or whatever, and he would, he'd be firing us up. And that was the way Bruce was, and that's kind of the way Bruce is. He's definitely more polished now, as people do and become, but he's still Bruce. He's still Gabby, as his nickname is. He's still just a great guy, and after all the success he's had in the NHL, after all the wins he's had, he's still easy to talk to. He still will give you his opinion, and he'll still do it in a really human and personal way. So that was fun for me to kind of revisit that time in my career and to ask questions that I hope you guys found interesting and useful. Because my goodness, if you can't learn something from a coach and an amazing player, which we talked about too, amazing coach, amazing player, struggled to get to the NHL. Now he did it as a coach. Like, there's a lot of lessons there that we can pick up on. So super cool. It was awesome that we were able to do that. And yeah, as far as what's going on with me, I usually don't talk about me that much here and what we got going on in the background, but really excited with what I got going on in the Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. We have some amazing stuff going on. I've developed some awesome mindset training for kids. It's my unstoppable belief system that's going on in there. I have a character course that we've developed. I'm also bringing in experts in their fields. I have a mental toughness coach by the name of Shawnee Harley coming in and delivering some amazing content. I have Mike Shaw, who is specializes in gratitude and resiliency, who's coming in and giving a workshop. There's so much stuff going on in there, and I'm providing this to these members of my parent group on a membership basis. And it's a really exciting time for me because the group has grown. It's a really engaged group, and it's meant for parents of players who are navigating this space, right? This hockey space of how do we get our kids to be our best? How do we best support them on their way, with something that they're passionate about? Like, to have kids that are passionate about something in this day and age is something that parents are grateful for. Now we want to be able to support them. And I know personally how hard it is to do that journey, to become a hockey player, whether that's make the junior level, whether that's to make your midget team, to be a college player, or even to be a pro. It's hard, right? There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of stuff going on. And whether you're a parent who's been there and played or not, it's even harder if you haven't, right? So why do we do this alone? So one of the advantages in this day and age is to learn from others, which is what the podcast is about, but it's also what this Facebook group is about. It's about learning from me and my experiences. It's about learning from the guests that I bring in for the live interviews, the specialists in their field, to help clear the air, right, on what's going on so we can best support our kids. Then there's also units in there, like I said, about how to give these kids, these athletes, the opportunity to make the most of what they have in front of them, which is an amazing sport called hockey with so many great things at the end of these streets that they can walk down. So I'm really excited about that. If you want to check it out, please do. Up My Hockey Facebook group. You can also go to my website, www.upmyhockey.com. There's details there about the membership opportunity, and we're going to be releasing that in the coming weeks. So check it out. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in. Everyone out there, play hard and keep your head up. Cheers.